morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in this EaSI Technical Assistance webinar. I am Adriana Olmedo, and I am a Network and Training Officer at the Microfinance Network. And while we wait for the other attendees to join us, I can maybe start with an introduction. I will be introducing you first to the program that is actually financing and supporting this the possibility that we have today to speak about this topic, very important topic, that it's the Employment and Social Innovation Program. It is uh, it is a program from the DG Employment, the Director General of Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion, and it aims at reducing poverty, creating financial inclusion, and improving employment situations in Europe. And this I'm going to tell you a bit more about it. It is a project that EMN participates in a consortium with Frankfurt School, Business School, and then also Microfinance Center are partners in this program. It has two strands, as you can see here on the left. It has a very important part that is a technical assistance one to the microfinance institutions of the European sector. And then it also has this other second, a very important part that is the financial instruments. On the technical assistance side, as I've mentioned, we work with our partners and also MFR that does the ratings of the microfinance institutions. And later I will tell you a bit more, probably you already know, the type of things that we do under this technical assistance side. And this includes, of course, this webinar. And then on all of the financial product side, they are managed by the EIF, and they have guarantees, they have capacity building instruments, funded instruments also. You can go into the EIF's webpage to find out more about that. So what we offered, I'll just go briefly, because as you might see here on the arrow on the end, this program is ending now in July 2022. And we offered capacity building activities such as consultancy days, which we call them tailored trainings, investment readiness trainings options, institutional assessments for the microfinance institution. Then we have more general things such as study visits or peer-to-peer visits, and ongoing help desks that people can contact to ask questions about microfinance. All of these things are also going to go into the new session or the new years of this program, because they're going to have a successor for the EaSI program that is now on finalization stages. So it should be starting or ongoing as of July 2022 too. So there won't be any gap, fortunately, for the financial institutions. But most of these activities that we are doing on the current session, you'll be also able to find them on the following one. So if you have more interest or news, you can also, of course, also contact EMN, but go to the commissions page or to the EIB's page to find out more on when this program will start. I don't want to bore you more with this talk about ECTA. So if you have questions here on the slides that you will receive afterwards, you have the information, the emails, and the webpage. I just wanted to remind you all that this session is being recorded, of course, for the EaSI webpage. It's going to be uploaded there too. And now I can tell you a little bit more on how you can interact with us during these sessions. So if you want to use the icon of raising your hand, you can let us know by clicking on it, and then when the time comes, we will unmute your microphone so you can interact with the experts. You can also use the little chat box to your right, so you can write things in the chat so that everyone can read them, or you can use the Q&A one, and I will moderate the questions for the expert when the time comes. So today we are joined by Marie Vial. She's my colleague here at EMN. She's a policy officer that is going to be representing our advocacy efforts here at the European Microfinance Network. And she will let you know a bit more of what EMN is doing during these times on these topics. We have now, or by the end of last year, have designed a new strategy towards 2025. And one of the three pillars or most important for EMN is the vulnerable population. So this is one of our first steps towards that direction, and we hope is one of many too. Joining Marie, we have Lucie Cordier. She's Senior Loan Officer at ADI. She can maybe tell you a little bit more about her experience when she talks, but she has been a Senior Loan Officer since 2013, I think, if I remember well. Then we also have Olivia, and I'm sorry, Olivia, if I pronounce bad your last name, Van den Boger. I hope I did it okay. Partnership and Advocacy Manager at MicroStart. Olivia has many of years of experience at MicroStart. Actually, she, if I recall well, has gone through many different positions too at MicroStart. So she can tell you a bit more about her experience or when she tells you about the activities MicroStart is doing on this topic. And then we have Guillem Aris. Guillem actually was part of EMN's board of director many years ago, so we know him quite well. He's a friend of the house, let's say. He's now director at Ocupación, and he's also an ambassador for the tool he's gonna show you from the OECD. So we're very happy to have you all here, and with no further ado, I will give the floor to Marie, and I will be moderating the questions afterwards. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Adriana. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so
Marie, we can see your notes. Maybe if you put it in presenter's mode, presenter's mode.
Yeah, just one moment.
Perfect.
Is it there?
No, it returned to the notes.
Shoots. Yeah, my connection is quite bad. Could I ask you to share the presentation, maybe?
Yes. We'll put it ourselves. Don't worry, and we pass the slides for you. Just a second.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, don't worry at all. Yes, now.
Okay, thank you, Adriana, for this introduction words, and thank you everyone for joining us today for this webinar. So migrants and refugees entrepreneurship is a vast topic which has been the subject of many studies. So we do not pretend that we will be able to address all the aspects of this topic today, but the objective of this webinar is rather to give you the opportunity to our speakers to present their initiative in favor of migrant entrepreneurship, and they will explain what they do on the ground, and maybe at the end of this session we will draw some recommendation. Before I let our speakers take the floor, I will say a few words just to set the framework. So this past decade, due to humanitarian crisis, the population of refugees and migrants arriving in Europe has increased, as you can see on the graph. Just as a reference, in 2019, more than 4.2 million immigrants arrived in the EU, and 2/3 of them were born outside of the EU. So when they settled in their new country, many migrants struggled to integrate the labor market for many reasons due to the language, but also sometimes because of the recognition of their diplomas. And this led to a high level of unemployment, which in turn contribute to their social exclusion. On the next slide, thank you. So to avoid this situation, entrepreneurship can either be a new career choice or just a pathway towards employment. So I will not develop in detail the benefit of entrepreneurship because our guest speakers will address them. But as a quick reminder, we can distinguish three main benefits. So the first one, the entrepreneurship opens new professional opportunities to migrants and refugees, and there are opportunities that they did not have in the labor market. Secondly, entrepreneurship has many non-financial benefits for the workers, such as more self-empowerment and self-confidence, and it also contributes to build a stronger and larger social and professional network. And thirdly, it's a way to improve employability. So even if the creation of their business is not successful, the programs leading to entrepreneurship is a way to improve their skills, their experience, and their employability. Can we go to the next slide? Yes, thank you. So just to mention a few data, in its Missing Entrepreneurs report published in 2021, the OECD and the European Commission report that in 2020, 12% of working immigrants coming from a country outside of the EU were self-employed. Just to make a comparison, 14% of immigrants from the EU are self-employed. So from these numbers, we can see that immigrants coming from outside of the EU are just slightly less likely than migrants from the EU to be self-employed. Keeping on with data, just the slides before. Sorry, thank you. In the same study, the OECD and the European Commission report that between 2006 and 2020, the share of immigrants who are self-employed has doubled. So we have a 213% percentage augmentation for immigrants from EU countries and a 180% augmentation for immigrants coming from outside of the EU, which is actually coherent with what I've said earlier about the fact that immigration in the EU has increased significantly during this past decade. So overall, these numbers show the pressing need for the EU and member states to strengthen and develop their programs to ensure that migrants who cannot access the labor market can at least develop their own business. On the next slide, please. Thank you. So just a few words on the regulatory context. So the European Union shares competences on migration and asylum policies, but with EU countries, but for the integration field, the European Union only supports EU countries and develop guidance, and member states are primarily responsible for creating and implementing social policies. So as a result, policies and schemes for immigrants are often driven by national governments in cooperation with non-government organizations. But when we look at the national level, and as you can see in the graph, only 1/3 of member states have a clear entrepreneurship strategy for immigrants in place. And in most countries, policy strategy remain quite general. Fortunately, the EU has been providing some support these past few years. As I said earlier, so the EU has no competence in integration policy, but through supporting programs such as EaSI and ESF, the EU institutions have been supporting migrants entrepreneurship, and they play an essential role in providing a supportive, I would say, ecosystem to the microfinance. So for instance, in 2019, under the EaSI Guarantee Axis, the European Commission has launched its Business Development Services pilot project that was meant to strengthen the provision of business development services to refugees and migrants, and it also contributed to their financial and social inclusion. And on the next slide, thank you. So from the OECD report from 2021, we can see that even though member states are slowly developing migrants' entrepreneurship schemes, these programs are less developed than general entrepreneurship schemes. In practice, what we can see is that they are often small-scale projects, and it is difficult to see the result of these programs. So in some countries, we can find strong programs supporting migrant entrepreneurship, and they are usually the results of initiatives launched by non-governmental organizations. So I will leave our guests the time to develop their initiative and work in favor of migrant entrepreneurship. But just as a small introduction, when we mention these schemes, we usually refer to entrepreneurship skills program, which includes, for instance, business and financial planning trainings, but also language trainings. There is also administrative and regulatory support, and finally, access to finance. So here, we will get back to you. We will get back on this topic later, but according to the last studies, access to finance schemes for immigrant entrepreneurs tend to be very small scale and insufficient compared to the other schemes, the general schemes. So with that, I will leave the floor to Lucie Cordier from EaSI, who will explain to us what they have been doing at EaSI. Lucie, you have.
Thank you, Marie. Hi, everybody. So I'm Lucie from EaSI. So I'm a loan officer at EaSI since 2015. So let's see. I will share my presentation. Is that good now? Yes? Okay, thank you. So I will present you how does EaSI support migrants and refugees in France. So due its mission and its strong anchorage in less favored areas of France, EaSI has always financed migrant entrepreneurs. Nowadays, they represent about 20% of our customers, so it's about 6,000 migrants we finance every year. And in 2017, EaSI launched a specific program called Agir to address especially the needs of refugees. So here, just to be clear, a migrant is somebody born outside EU, and when we said refugees, can be a statutory refugee, stateless people, or a person under protection. So through the program Agir, we have three main objectives. The first one is to foster refugees' social and economic integration. We do that through business and personal loans up to 10,000 euro, non-financial services. EaSI also created a pool of 40 referents who interact and get trained. And we also developed special tools, like, for instance, multilingual flyers. The second objective is to promote the positive impact of refugees on the French society. So we do that mainly with portraits of our refugees customers, and we are communicating these portraits through our national campaign, and we use them as a role model to inspire other migrants. And our last objective is to collaborate with grassroots organizations to capitalize pool resources and know-how. So we are trying to build strong partnerships with refugees, support local organizations, doing mutual referrals, and trying to provide 360-degree supports for migrant entrepreneurs. So through this program, let's see what are the achievements we have until now. So in 2021, we financed 260 refugees. It's a growth of 21% compared to 2020. Most of the people we finance were entrepreneurs. So it's about 200 business loans we did last year for refugees. And the rest are personal loans, so mainly giving a loan to buy a car, to access more easily the job market. Most of the people we finance were new customers, about 200. And next to these financial services, we also provided non-financial services. So it's about 300 refugees that benefited from a non-financial service that could be advice, training, or coaching. And in total, it's about 600 support actions that were registered. So of course, those figures are only for refugees. If we talk about migrants, the figures are very different. So, for instance, it's 5,500 migrants we financed last year, and 4,500 migrant entrepreneurs. So now I would like to present you a bit the challenges and opportunities faced by a migrant entrepreneur in France. So the main challenges are the lack of a migrant support organization on access to labor and entrepreneurship. Of course, language and cultural barriers. We also are confronted often with a poor digital knowledge. The complex French administrative procedures are also a big barrier, and as Marie said earlier, very often diplomas and work experience from abroad are not recognized in the French market. So becoming an entrepreneur remains difficult for a migrant. And I would say that the access to bank loans is often impossible, especially for people who only have a 1-year residency permit. Fortunately, next to that, there is also a lot of opportunities for them to become entrepreneur. In France, we have a rich network of support organizations that enhance language skills, computer skills, and administrative rights. We can also build on the previous experience of migrants in their home countries, where often entrepreneurship is commonplace. So they often already have experience of a small-scale entrepreneurship. They can get support from their community, and we are also meeting people who are really used to challenges, I would say, and they have a strong determination and a great resourcefulness. So they often have access to informal network and solutions that we have no idea about. So I really believe entrepreneurship can be a solution to a new career for them, or temporary jobs. Meanwhile, they improve their language and other skills. So let's see now some example of practical actions we engage in Valence. So Valence is a city south of France where I work. So the first actions are to do the sourcing. So basically, it's how to get contact with migrants. It's really important for us to go to them, because often they don't know where to find the information to become an entrepreneur. So for that, every month we organize group training session within the mandatory civic training by OFI. So OFI is the French Office for Immigration and Integration. We also work hand in hand with grassroots organizations to advocate about entrepreneurship as a low-risk solution if well advised. So that's a lot of work. That's an important work. We have a lot of small organizations, and often they don't have a very good knowledge of what is entrepreneurship, and especially small-scale entrepreneurship. And finally, we also encourage our clients to promote entrepreneurship and microfinance in their community, so as a solution to create their job, so to create a word of mouth. So the second point is how to cope with cultural and administrative challenges. So here I have a help of a colleague, Yves, who is a volunteer in EaSI. A very committed volunteer, and is providing free administrative support and advice on business development, so that can be before or after people start their company. He has a very practical and soft approach that is really appreciated by our clients. It's really important not to patronize the migrants and the entrepreneur, and that's also help us generate a good word of mouth. And finally, about access to funding. So we adopt a stepped approach when it's possible. We try to be flexible on guarantees requirement. We take into account undeclared revenues and activities. And we also have a possibility to provide loans without interest as a complement to microcredit. So that we can find a solution for all the people who want to become entrepreneur. And also, so as I said before, there is the Agir program, so that represent a pool of 40 loan officers everywhere in France. And that's also a great tool because we have regular internal exchanges of best practices and challenges, and we are also open to try new approaches, to take initiative on this subject to develop a migrant entrepreneurship. Finally, I would like you to meet Maria to illustrate what I was saying. So Maria is one of our clients. She's doing catering, dressmaking, and hairdressing. She's from Armenia, and she arrived in France in 2010. The first years, she had period of unemployment and small jobs. And in 2019, she decided to start an income-generating activity that was not declared. So we met her in 2020, and we helped her to formalize part of her activity. She could not declare everything because she didn't have all the diploma needed for it. And we also financed her to acquire professional tools. In 2021, we provided her again with extra financial support to face COVID crisis. As she had just formalized her activity before the crisis, she didn't have access to any governmental help. And beginning of the year, she obtained a hairdressing diploma. So a business is now fully declared and sustainable. So that's why she also has a big smile on the picture. However, administration is still an issue for her. And for instance, entrepreneurial status makes a 1-year visa renewal more difficult right now. That was it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Lucy. It was really interesting. Before I pass the floor to Olivia, I had just a couple of questions. You mentioned all the initiative launched by EaSI. Could you tell us a bit about the success of this initiative? What are the survival rates, more if you have these numbers?
Yes, so about survival rate, I only have a global rate for all of our clients. That's also a choice we made in EaSI not to discriminate by type of clients because it could also imply a different behavior for loan officers. So actually the survival rate after 3 years is 85%. So it's really high. It's higher than the years before. So that's also due to the COVID crisis and all the governmental help we companies got in France. So that's not a really relevant rate, I think. Anyway, our main goal in EaSI is to give a right to try, and sometimes it can also be the right to fail. So survival rate is important for us, but it's not the most important.
Okay, thank you. And could you tell us a bit more about the kind of company that are created by migrants?
Yes, so So like you said, it's the people we met, it's a really small scale company. Most of them are starting in services, so it can be delivery services. We also have quite some clients who do activities in retail. So it's all kind of companies that doesn't need also big investment to start, and easy to start with, to try first before to go to the next stage.
Thank you very much. I will pass now the floor to Olivia, and Lucy, we will get back to you during the Q&A.
Thank you.
Olivia, you are up.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So indeed, I'm Olivia from MicroStart. I work as partnership manager at MicroStart. And I will tell you a bit more about our migrants methodology, our methodology to support migrant entrepreneurs. So first, some words about MicroStart. So we're the biggest microfinance institution in Belgium, and we exist since a bit more than 10 years. And we actually have 3 missions. It's give access to finance to people that don't have access to the regular banks and that want to start or develop their businesses. We also give free support to these starters and entrepreneurs to make sure that they can develop a sustainable business. And then the third mission that we have is advocacy to defend the right to economic initiative for everyone, and especially the most vulnerable ones. And of course, migrants and refugees, they are part of these vulnerable groups. Why? Because they have more barriers than others to start or develop their business. But I will talk about that in the next slide, indeed. So what is the Belgian context? So according to a study from the National Bank of last year, we see that immigration has boosted the GDP by 3.5%. So it's positive for the Belgian economy, but still there's a difference to find a job for a Belgian person or for migrants in Belgium. So the employment rate is 12 percentage point lower for migrants. So that's why we also need alternatives to this. Also, you see that there's a difference, but there are also a lot of migrants that have a job, but maybe not the job they wishes to have because of the recognition of diplomas that is not acquired here, etc. So an alternative for them is to create their own job, so to become entrepreneur, so they can socially and economically integrate, and also create an added value, of course. But still, the barriers are high to become self-employed in Belgium. That's the case for everyone, even for Belgians. So they are even higher for people that don't master the language that well, or there are some cultural differences. For example, in Belgium, we have this great administrative culture with a lot of paperwork. So it's really difficult to understand when you want to start and you don't understand well the language or the habits. And then, of course, there's the barrier of access to funding. So it's, like Adi, like Lucy, you said, like it's very difficult to have access to a regular bank if you want to start a business. And for example, you have a limited permit of stay, etc. So these are some of the challenges that they face. And it's, of course, very crucial to empower and to support the migrants to become entrepreneur or to develop their business. So what's our methodology to support migrants? So first of all, we adapted our support tools, our business creation support tools. So I wrote under that partnerships are key because it's true. So like Lucy, you said, we work together with different organizations, with different partners. And with them, we managed to create some support tools in different languages. So in English, of course, but also in Arabic, in Farsi, in Turkish, etc. So these support tools, they're, of course, flyers, but also we translated our e-learning to help to elaborate a business plan. So it's translated in English and also in Arabic. So that's a thing that the person can do by themselves online. But also we translated some webinars, and some other tools, so to be sure that it's adapted to the migrants. Another interesting part of our methodology is that we hired what we call the community officers. So what's a community officer? It's actually like a normal microcredit advisor, but himself or herself from that has a migrant or refugee background. So the idea here is to really make the bridge between migrant communities or refugee communities and entrepreneurship. So the person often speaks the language, has a big community, and make sure that he understands the reality, so he can help better the entrepreneurs or the starters that want to start their business. Another thing is that we give collective training sessions, but also individual training sessions in the form of coaching. And this coaching is given by volunteers at MicroStart, and these volunteers they are of course trained to make sure that their way of coaching is adapted to migrants or refugees. So, for example, it's actually very simple, but that they don't use too difficult wordings, etc. That they're really low threshold, so really adapted to the person that they have in front of them. Another thing that we do, it's more about our financial services. So we have microcredits. There's an interest rate, but for people that don't want to pay interest for some religious reasons, we also developed we call it the Option Liberté. So it's an interest-free microcredit where you don't pay interest, but you have a higher administrative cost. And the idea here is also to request some kind of certification or labels to make sure that it's okay, it's in accordance to the Islam law. So that's something we're working on now, because we know that it will really help to make this microcredit also more accessible or more more known amongst these communities. I just wanted to add one more thing, sorry. It's about the mentalities, because for now in Belgium, in the newspaper, you always, mostly have some negative stories. So we at MicroStart as well, we want to give some positive stories, to make some case studies about the people we help, and also to promote these stories during our campaigns. So to change the mentalities and to give them a better how do you say that, a better spot in the mentalities. Let's say it like this. What are our results? So more than 60% of the people that we support are born outside the European Union. So here we have actually the same definition as ADI. So it's people, we call them migrants or people born outside the European Union, and nearly 10% are recognized refugees. When you look at the numbers where we have community officers in the agencies, they are much higher. So for example, in Antwerp and Ghent, we're around 15% of our public that are recognized refugees. So we see really that there's an impact of these community officers on the number of people we support. And just in real numbers, for 2021, we supported 379 migrants and 57 refugees financially. And these numbers are higher for the business development services. We also see that for refugees especially, but also migrants, that there's a need of more intensive coaching, more one-to-one coaching. So yeah, that's a reality, and I think that's good, because it's like that we can support them to really create a sustainable business. And I also wanted to share a small story. It's the story of Mustafa. So Mustafa arrived in 2015 in Belgium. He ran a flower shop in Syria for several years. And when he arrived, he actually He did some jobs also in the flower sector because he wanted to gain some experience, but his actual dream was to once open his shop here in Belgium, his flower shop. So that's what he did actually. So his neighbors thought about microstarts. We often see with migrants or refugees that it's via word of mouth that they reach MicroStart or that they get to know our services. So on the picture on the right, you see Mustafa, and on the left, you see his advisor, Zidane. So Zidane is himself a Syrian refugee. And actually, so they had a meeting together to discuss the project. And Zidane made a file for him, gave him some support on administrative and legal aspects in, of course, his own language. They're both from Syria, which is, of course, very easy for Mustafa because he knows Dutch, but for the really technical aspects, it's easier in his own language. And he also received the microcredits to really start his shop. And so, he started a few months ago, and now his business is running quite well, and the customers are coming back. So for the moment, it's a success story, and of course, Zidane is always there to continue to give advice to him. What I also wanted to share with you is a pilot project we have. So it's a project that we're developing only now. So it's very, very new. It's called the Community Coaches Project. So it's a project to support refugees who want to start a business. So we do that project in partnership with UNHCR in Belgium and also the Umbrella Refugee Committee. So the Umbrella Refugee Committee, it's actually a committee that is above some other specific refugee committees, like, for example, the Afghan Refugee Committee, the Syrian Refugee Committee. You also have a Women Refugee Committee, etc. So they organize themselves to work on several topics like housing, like work, like education, etc. So they also wanted to work on entrepreneurship, and that's this partnership is about this topic. So what's the project about? So we want to train some representative of different communities about entrepreneurship. And the idea is that these the people that we train, they become ambassadors, so entrepreneurship ambassadors, who are also volunteers of MicroStarts, and their role is actually to organize group sessions, to reach out to their communities, to bring them together and to sensitize and inform about entrepreneurship. And when some people that are interested in becoming entrepreneurs really want to go further and really have a very concrete project, they reorient them to MicroStarts for eventually more in-depth support about financial planning, business planning, etc., or a financial support. But the project is quite new, so I don't have results to share yet. So we trained 12 people for the moment. And the interesting part is also that from these 12 people, 2/3 are women. And actually in refugee communities, we see that 85% of the people, the refugees that we support are men. So we're really happy to have a lot of women aboard. So hopefully we can also reach more women entrepreneurs. But I will tell you in a few months how the project evolves. Thank you for your attention, and don't hesitate if you have questions.
Thank you, Olivia. It was really interesting, and it was nice to hear this kind of success story with, for instance, Mustafa. Just a few questions before I give the floor to Guilherme. So I was wondering, what are the main support that are requested from migrants? You talked about coaching sessions. What are the needs they have?
The needs are mostly on administrative level and on accounting and really the legal framework, because that's something that they really don't know, and it's difficult to find really the way in all this information in Belgium. So that's the most requested information, and I think that's the needs are also the highest. So what we also see is some people that just arrived in Belgium, they don't know which products or which enterprise will work. So that's also sometimes a question that we have, but it's more difficult for us to answer on that because that's more the core of the business, of course. But I would say it's more the administrative and legal aspects.
Okay, thank you. And from your perspective, how the EU or the national level could support you or complement your initiatives?
I think the last few years there already been a lot of initiatives that saw the light. So there's an improvement, let's say. But especially for MicroStart, what would help is at MicroStart, we also always work with a guarantee mechanism. So, or you have to have a personal guarantor if you request a microcredit, or you have this saving guarantee. The problem when you just arrived in Belgium or when you are refugee or migrant is that you don't always have a network. So this guarantee is often a problem. And so what for example, would be nice at European or national level is to have a system or a mechanism that could, that could give that guarantee to these people. So instead of having to find a guarantee themselves, to have like a fund or a guarantee fund that would take that role.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. We will see you back for the Q&As. I will now, thank you very much, Olivia. I will now give the floor to Guillem Aris.
Sure, thank you. So I'm Guillem Aris, I'm director at Autoocupació, and as has been said, I'm an old friend of the EMN, involved in the EMN activities during a long time, and really happy to join this webinar. So first I will briefly present Autoocupació. Autoocupació means self-employment in Catalan, and it's a private and non-profit organization created in 1986 to support the underserved to start their businesses. We work with different targets, with young people, with women, with migrants, with unemployed, and we offer them a combination of financial and non-financial services. We support them with business planning, advising, with a lot of training. So for us, underserved entrepreneurs and migrants, what more need it's training, is developing their skills, and access to finance through a Business Angels network. And we started in 2002 the first microfinance program in Spain. Now we collaborate with different financial MFIs, and maybe what has been more successful working with migrants is our mentoring program. It's entrepreneurs with wide experience managing their companies, supporting as volunteers people who are starting their first venture, and connecting them with how we do business in Spain and about the legal framework, and also connecting with their communities, giving them visibility and supporting them during all the process to when they are consolidating their first business. No? We also have a service to help underserved entrepreneurs and also migrants all the papers that they need to create the company and to manage and to follow all the commitments with the administration in terms of taxes, accounting, contracts, labor contracts, etc. And we also created a project 10 years ago called Reempresa. It's like a business transfer market for SMEs, and many of the migrants they find easier to buy a company that is already existing, and maybe someone will be retired or will want to change their profession. That's starting something from scratch. No? And I have the honor to be appointed recently as ambassador. That sounds really ambassador, but of the European Entrepreneurship Policy Tool. And my idea today is to share briefly how this tool works. It's a tool developed by the European Commission, the DG Employment, Social Affairs and the OECD, the Center for Entrepreneurship and SMEs of the OECD. And it's a tool developed, it's an online tool that I will show now, developed for self-assessment and learning to support policymakers and to support organizations to develop programs. I will try to share my screen and show you the tool. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So here is the website. You can put a better entrepreneurship policy tool in Google and you go direct to the website. The first thing that I want to say is that the tool is in different European languages. So it's easy to manage for all the stakeholders in different countries. And it's based, the idea is to help organizations, but policymakers at national, regional, local level, support organizations, researchers, universities to assess the ecosystem, different entrepreneurship ecosystems. There are two main, that one is social entrepreneurship and the second one is inclusive entrepreneurship. And under inclusive entrepreneurship, you have 4 targets that you can assess. It's migrant entrepreneurs, that is what I will show you today. But you have also women, you have youth, and you have unemployed. And there is another, with the same tool, another assessment for social entrepreneurship. What you can find in the website in the tool is that you can start an assessment on inclusive and social entrepreneurship, one of both. And after the assessment, you can share your results. And there are also some resources, mainly are case studies and guidance notes on different contexts. For example, to improve regulations for migrant entrepreneurship. This is what the tool has. So a questionnaire for assess an inclusive, in this case, migrant entrepreneurship ecosystem, and at the same time, some resources and mainly guidance notes to develop and for policymakers and to develop new programs. So if you want, I can show you how to start an assessment. This is an open tool, so everyone can go in and register and do their assessments. But the idea is to generate and to create group assessments. So you can go to the tool, create a group, and for example, if I want to assess and create a strategy for improve the migrant entrepreneurship ecosystem in Barcelona, so I will invite people from the university, people from the municipality, from the regional government, support organizations, financial actors, and all the stakeholders, invite them and make a clear picture about how they see this ecosystem, and at the same time to see the difference between how policymakers see the ecosystems, how entrepreneurs see the ecosystem, and how, for example, BDS organizations or MFIs can see the ecosystem. So if you go, for example, to inclusive entrepreneurship in an assessment, you can choose women, youth, migrants, or unemployed. And if you go to migrants, there are like 6 areas for the assessment. And in each area, you have a questionnaire with 6-7 questions that, as I said, it's a self-assessment, so it's subjective, but as bigger is the group, more representative will be the result. If you click here, for example, in the 6 areas are strategies, culture, regulations, skills, access to finance, and network. So this is for migrant entrepreneurs. but you can go also for women, for youth, or for unemployed, and the structure is the same, but the questions are slightly different. And if you go to strategies, you will find, in this case, 7 questions. For example, let's go to this. Policy objectives and targets for promoting and supporting migrant entrepreneurship have been defined. And you can go there and assess how do you see this is happening in your area, in locally, regionally, nationally, and you have some guidance here. For example, a height score includes, in this case, the strategic plan is available publicly, either as a standalone document or part of a broader policy strategy. For example, a self-employment strategy for migrant communities. In this case, for example, we have in Barcelona a self-employment strategy for migrant communities, but at national level, there is nothing. Entrepreneurship policy objectives are linked to the broader employment, economic, and social policy objectives, so it's really integrated in the whole strategy. Key migrant entrepreneurship stakeholders were engaged early in the development of policy objectives and targets, and indicators of success and data collection process have been defined. A public sector actor is responsible for achieving migrant entrepreneurship policy objectives. In terms of this, you can evaluate how is this issue in your context, in your local context or regional context. Then you go to the next question, and for example, in this case, there is an action plan to mobilize public sector actors and other relevant stakeholders to achieve migrant entrepreneurship policy objectives, and you can evaluate, and the system will save all your evaluations, and then you can go to another. For example, let's go to finance, that we are in a EMN webinar. You need to finish every area to go to the next one, no? But we can go here and migrants, and for example, go to access to finance, no? And there are some questions about about how is the context for accessing finance for migrant entrepreneurs in this case. So needs assessment are used to identify how policy can address gaps and in the availability and accessibility of finance for migrant entrepreneurs. And you can evaluate, you have the same kind of guidance to try to focus on no-based evaluation, and the current suite of business startup financing offers inappropriate profiles of migrants. So it's a really complete tool. It's subjective. Then the most important thing is to use it like a group assessment. You can create an account here, and also you can create a group, and you can invite your stakeholders in order to assess the ecosystem for migrants in your area, and then start with a full picture, start thinking on how to build strategies in these 6 areas. And what is interesting also of the tool is that you have some resources here. ADI is the first one in this list, and you can go, for example, for the target and look for migrants, and then types of resources. As I said, you have here some case studies. Many of them needs to be updated, and some guidance notes that, for example, one for each area. For example, guidance note, building a supportive regulatory environment for migrant entrepreneurs. So there are general but really well-structured guidance to generate a strategy to improve the regulatory context for migrant entrepreneurs. There is another one about focusing on skills, building entrepreneurship skills and capacity for migrant entrepreneurs. For example, if we go to the first one, you have here the documents where the guidance is based on. And for example, in these 4 areas, at the end, you will have some case studies like the Startup Visa Portugal, that case study that has been using this guidance. No? It's a complete tool, and I really recommend to check all these guidance notes, because there are, I repeat, it's basic, it's more focusing on strategy for policymakers and for organizations who are developing programs, but it's really complete, and I think it's interesting. I invite you all to go to the tool, to play with it, and really it's interesting to create these group assessments, inviting your stakeholders, and really to have a good picture about how is the ecosystem, in this case for migrant entrepreneurs in your city or in your region or your country. Okay.
Thank you, Guilhem. It's an incredible source of information. Just a few questions to you before we move to the Q&As. So you mentioned that you're new in your position of ambassador for this tool. Can you really see the result or the positive initiative coming up from this tool?
Well, I'm just starting in this role of ambassador, but I have been working in Spain with some organizations and start showing the tool, especially with policymakers. So we are members of a group in Catalonia of organizations working to promote women entrepreneurship, and we are creating a group assessment in order to define a strategy, because if not, if you have many times policymakers, organizations start a program based only on their experience or on some needs of some of their targets or their clients, and it's good to have to involve different organizations, not only support organizations, entrepreneurship support organizations, also researchers, policymakers, and entrepreneurs to develop strategies and create strategies on how to support these targets. No? In migrants, so there are in Spain some organizations supporting migrants in different ways, with funding, with non-financial services, but there is not a strategy, a national strategy. Also in Catalonia, there is not a regional strategy to support migrant entrepreneurship, and we are working on it, and I think that it's a very good tool to start this kind of collective work.
Okay, thank you. And just the last question. So from your perspective as Director of Auto Occupation and Ambassador of the OECD, and considering your experience, how the EU and national level could strengthen the support that you have been bringing to migrant entrepreneurship?
In my opinion, there are two main ways. One, it's at the European level to facilitate the regulatory framework to help people coming from outside the EU to start a business here in Europe. It's not just, it needs to be done nationally and also at the European level. Because there are common rules in Europe and also many more restrictions in each country. So in my experience in Spain, this is the main barrier for many migrants to start a business. The second one is to focus on migrants, to fund or to allocate an important amount of money for employment policies for migrants. For example, here in Spain, we have lots of funding to support young people to get a job or to be an entrepreneur and so on. but there is nothing especially for migrants. And I think that by the same way that we have at European level a young initiative, the Young Warranty, and there are lots of money here to support young people. For migrants, the European Commission and also the states should do the same.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're
So
welcome.
before we go to the Q&A session, I just wanted to say a few closing words. So as I mentioned during my introduction, I mentioned the different support that have been launched at the EU level with EaSI and ESF. And so for the future program, for instance, with InvestEU and the EaSI strength under ESF Plus, I think we can hope for to see like a reinforcement of the budget allocation to ensure the continuity of this initiative launched by MFIs, and also to support the programs for the access to finance and BDS, and also, as Guylaine just mentioned, to facilitate the regulatory framework at the national and EU level in favor of migrant entrepreneurships. We are coming to the end, so we will open the floor to Q&As now.
Yes, Marie. So I think you have already answered a couple of questions that were related to EU support that will come in the next MFF, so the multi-annual framework, and I assume that we can all find out more when they come if you register to our EMN's newsletter, because we usually send up policy briefings about these updates. So there you can read Marie and all of the updates that she can give you on these topics. Then after policy questions, which you have already answered, I don't have other questions. So I guess that was a big topic about the interest on what's coming, right? So I encourage people to write a couple of things on the chat. If you want to also raise your hand, that would be nice, so you can talk to our experts. I have a question here for Guillaume. Yes, I'll wait. I don't know if Adrien, you want to raise your hand. We can hear you. Oh, okay, he's writing. So he says, how do you, Guillaume, think EU or EaSI could improve the national legal framework for migrant access to finance?
We cannot hear you.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah. I think it's not only for access to the regulatory framework for access to finance at EU level and at least in Spain at national level is more or less the same than for non-migrants. The question is that the regulatory framework, not for access to finance, is to start a business. So many people not has all the permits to create a business, to create their own job, and because they have residence but they don't have work permit, and this is really what the European Commission and the countries should focus. When you already have the permits to start a business, going to accessing to finance, it's easier. And of course, you have, as a migrant, you have special difficulties because you don't have a credit track, you don't have sometimes warranties, and there already are some tools and programs like the ones that are using the main MFIs in Europe to manage this, and investing money in the microfinance sector is the key, but the European Commission is already doing this. So for me, for the access to finance is not, or the regulatory framework barrier is not for access to finance, it's for getting the papers to start a business.
Thank you, Guillaume. I hope, Adrien, that he answered your question. If not, then you can put more follow-up questions. I will read them out for Guillaume. But I am quite intrigued, and I also find it interesting that we have all sides, right? Marie first spoke about policy, Guillem, you also spoke about policy, but then we have two very tangible examples of what actually happens on the ground and how practical things are happening thanks to Adi and MicroStart's example. So I think it was a very comprehensive view of the status quo, of how the things are happening at this moment. So Adrian says, not really. As I mentioned, to me, the question of accessing entrepreneurship and getting the papers is a matter of national legislation, not EU. But thank you. Okay, and I like this exchange. Thank you, Adrian. If no one else has other questions, then maybe we can
Adriana? Oh,
yes?
sorry to interrupt you, because
yes.
I have a question, and I think it's a private Q&A, so maybe we can I can follow up on that. Yes. Somebody, so I will just read the question. So could you explain the types of flexibility guarantees you offer to migrants and refugees, and what is ADI feedback regarding loan guarantee with migrants and refugees public? What I meant by flexibility on guarantees is that we will also accept guarantor who are, for instance, on a welfare recipient. We actually, it's a methodology we also do for travelers, and that works quite good. So it's more about a moral guarantee that a real financial guarantee on our loans. And we can even sometimes do a loan without guarantee if we are on a small loan with a good trust relationship with the people. We try not to have any. We try to open maximum, but with managing our risk at the same time. And actually, we don't have any big risk problem with this public. So the moral guarantee works quite good.
Thank you, Lucy. Yes, on the Q&A, sometimes people can write directly to the speakers, as you have already experienced. So thank you for reading that question for us. And I think the tool of having a guarantee, especially with this kind of target populations, is very, very important. So also maybe we can put that out, right, as a highlight on the importance of guarantees for the sector. And as Guillem has already said, for example, there is a youth guarantee, but would it be interesting to talk more about a migrant guarantee, right? It's a very important tool to open and develop a market. So we can continue the discussion again, I think, in our next policy documents, or when we find out the new things that will come on the MFF. With no further ado, then I'll thank everyone. Thank you, Marie, Guillem, Lucy, also Olivia. I appreciate everyone that stayed with us until the end. You will receive this recording and also an email following up with the presentations that everyone has sent, and also a very brief questionnaire about what you liked about this webinar that will help us a lot in order to continue doing things that are of your interest, but then also with continuing the funding for this kind of activities. So I appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.